All right, we're going to start because I'm sure everybody's tired. So thank you for joining this session. I know it's been a long day, but this is really a wonderful opportunity for us to hear from the representatives from these pharmaceuticals that have ongoing trials. So before I introduce Joanne, I just want to tell you, I just came from Albert Fung, who's doing the 3D virtual reality of the liver. If you have a chance tomorrow, stop by. He's going to be in room El Viento 2 all day, and it's really worth seeing what he has to show us. So right now, it is my pleasure to introduce Joanne Hatchett, who's talking down here. Oh, wait a second. Okay. Joanne is PSC Partners Medical Science Liaison. She's the mother of an adult child with PSC and a retired nurse practitioner. Before joining our staff, she was a longtime board member until she quit her job and decided to work for us, so we are the lucky ones. So Joanne is going to be moderating today's session on the clinical trial landscape in PSC. Thanks.
Thank you. I am just the introducer. All right. I am so glad to see you here. Am I too loud? Okay. Hearing firsthand about these PSC clinical trials is incredibly exciting. We now have 5 pharma leaders describing their ongoing PSC clinical trials. Each of these speakers are available to meet with each of you at their exhibit booths tomorrow. You can also contact them through the CVent app. We won't have a formal Q&A tonight. So first, we are privileged to hear from Dr. Matt Frankel, Chief Medical Officer, Vice President of Drug Development, Chemomab Therapeutics. Dr. Frankel.
Thank you. It's nice and loud up here. Hi, good evening. Matt Frankel, Chief Medical Officer. I'm an internist by training. I joined Chemomab a little under a year ago, and thank you for the opportunity to talk to all of you and share a little bit about what Chemomab is doing. And you can see here, we're pursuing what we believe is an opportunity to change the trajectory of primary sclerosing cholangitis. So can we go to the next slide, please? I guess I could do this instead. That would also help. So you've already seen that, so I'm going to jump to this slide. It's actually worthwhile. So what was identified a number of years ago was a specific target, which is CCL24. CCL24, along with 2 other chemokines, binds with CCR3, which is titled the receptor. And you end up with 2 downstream effects associated with that. One is the fibrosis and activation of fibroblasts. And the other is what you see here is the regulated cells and the monocytes. And in both instances, whether it's the inflammation or it's the fibrosis, both of those are clear components of primary sclerosing cholangitis, as well as a number of other diseases that we're evaluating as well. So in this instance, what you see is the binding of the CCR3, then the activation of the fibroblasts, as well as the inflammation. And the downstream effect of both of those is in fact out of balance. And this is what we perceive as the major challenge. And this becomes a vicious cycle because with increased inflammation, there's clearly more inflammation and it recruits and you see the ongoing cycle of this. So we came up with a monoclonal antibody that specifically binds to CCL24. What you see here, it's called CM101. And what we believe is that by inactivating the CCL24 or binding or neutralizing, what we're able to do is reduce the activation of the CCR3 receptor. And in so doing, that cycle that we just described is in fact reduced to the extent that you may see a slowing or reversal, as we will find out, of these various inflammatory and fibroblast activity. So right now, we are deeply involved in one specific study, which is the SPRING study. It's a phase 2 randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled clinical trial evaluating the safety and efficacy of CM101 in subjects with PSC. And the purpose is to study, as I mentioned, safety and tolerability at different doses of CM-101 in comparison to placebo. This is a more comprehensive depiction. And again, there's a lot of data here. If instead of trying to capture it all, you can certainly come visit with me out in the lobby. There's also a QR code that will give you a link so that all of this information is available as well. The study is to include 68 patients. There will be 2 doses as well as placebo involved. And the key enrollment is an alkaline phosphatase greater than 1.5 times the upper limit of normal, stable IBD, which includes patients who are on monoclonal antibodies specifically for their IBD, and a stable UDCA level. You can see here it's primarily safety and tolerability, but then in addition, we are certainly looking at a number of other aspects. And it's our expectation that if we were able to demonstrate based on this really positive data, that then we would move forward and proceed to a phase 3 program and expand appropriately. Currently, the study is in the United Kingdom, Spain, Germany, Israel, and the United States. And it does have orphan designation, which allows for some regulatory help. That was not me. So one of the questions that you have is, is this viable? Is this something that each of you could potentially participate in? The fact is that there are a number of treatment visits. It's an every 3-week dosing regimen. There is the initial phase, and then there's an open label treatment as well. So you do not have to continue in the open label. Frankly, you can end at any point in time, but the expectation is that one would participate through the double-blind portion, and then there is in fact an open label portion where all patients will be receiving the active comparator. We have sites, as I mentioned, in the US, and you can certainly find out more information by looking at the QR code or talking to me. One of the other points that's really important is that for many of you, the fact is that we are not doing the trial in all of your cities and communities. But one of our ways that we are ensuring that patients do have access is that we will be involved in essentially a concierge service to ensure that you have access to the study wherever you need to be. So whether it's flights, and the fact is it's a Q3 treatment. So a Q3 week, every 3-week treatment, so it's viable from that standpoint. The next question, and this is my last slide, is why would you consider this study? I'm preaching to the choir here, which is that you all know that there is no FDA-approved treatment, and the fact is that we are doing everything to try and determine if this is safe and tolerable and move in the right direction, and your participation is certainly part of that process. In the spring study, you'll see a physician who's experienced in this, and there's clearly a value of ensuring that you are getting the best treatment possible, and based on this, there is the opportunity to really engage in that conversation. You may get the study drug, however, you also may get placebo. That's part of the trial. But there's the confidence that in the open label section, you will get the active comparator. And the other aspect is no matter what, is you're contributing to the science. And the reason that I went into medicine in the first place, what seems like a long time ago, was to make a positive impact on patients' lives. And this is what I believe and what we believe at Chemomab is paramount, is doing this because maybe it will not be the answer for you at this time, but the long-term potential is enormous. So with that, I want to say thank you and look forward to hearing any of your conversation and communication afterwards.
Thank you, Dr. Frankel. Next, we have the pleasure of Shirley Dehn, Associate Director of Clinical Science, Escient Pharmaceuticals.
Hi, everyone. My name is Shirley Dehn. I'm a clinical scientist at Escient Pharmaceuticals. First of all, thank you to PSC Partners for hosting such a wonderful conference and inviting Escient and allowing us to have the opportunity to introduce ourselves and present our ongoing clinical study. Let's see. Escient is a privately held clinical stage biotech company. We're located in San Diego. We were founded in 2017. That picture to the right there was recently taken at our summer company picnic, so we're a small but dedicated bunch. Our research focus is in 3 areas, but our furthest developed program is in cholestatic pruritus, where we're targeting itch. So we have an ongoing clinical trial in patients with PSC and PBC who suffer from itch, and that's called the Pacific Study, and it's a phase 2 study. So we understand that currently there are limited treatment options available for patients who suffer from itch and cholestasis, and so it's not fully understood how itch occurs in patients with PSC and why does it vary between patient to patient. But there is growing evidence to suggest that elevated bile acids in patients with PSC or PBC may be driving this itch signal. And so we've developed our drug called EP547. It's oral and taken once a day, and it's designed to block the receptor that may be causing itch. So this is a diagram of how this drug works. There's a receptor called MRGPRX4, and it's located on nerves that drive that itch signal to the brain. And MRGPRX4 is activated by circulating bile acids, and EP547 inhibits MRGPRX4. So this study was developed in collaboration with a number of hepatologists and patient support organizations, and we've tried to make this study, we've designed it with patient safety and convenience top of mind. And so some of the key entry criteria, we're enrolling adult patients with a diagnosis of PSC or PBC who are experiencing moderate to severe daily or near daily itch. And if you're taking any anticholestatic or antipyretic medications, that's fine. We just ask that you maintain a stable dose of those medications throughout the study. There are a number of other eligibility criteria that would need to be discussed with your study doctor, but these are the key requirements. An overview of the study design, we're enrolling 58 adult patients. Again, stable doses of any concomitant antipyretic or anticholestatic medications. There's a screening period of up to 4 weeks. Then there's a 6-week double-blind treatment period where patients are randomized 1-to-1, so 50-50 chance of the study drug EP547 or placebo. Then there's a 6-week open label period where all patients, so everyone, will receive the study drug EP547 and a 2-week off-drug follow-up. So 12 weeks of treatment in total, and there are 6 study visits. And then throughout the study, you're going to be completing a daily itch questionnaire where you rate your itch on a scale of 0 to 10, and this will be completed on a smartphone, so you could either download an app on your own phone or we can provide a study device for you. Recruitment is ongoing, and we have lots of spaces for any interested individuals. It's a global study, so we're recruiting in 8 countries: US, Canada, UK, Israel, France, Netherlands, Belgium, and Spain. If you're interested in the study and you'd like to learn more, we also have a map of recruiting sites on our study website. That's pacificitchstudy.com. It's listed there on the slide. You can find the nearest site to you. We also offer the opportunity for you to participate from home, and you could participate in the study visits from home. We'll send a nurse to your house, and you'd have a telehealth visit with your study doctor if that's interested to you. And we'll also reimburse for any travel and expenses you may incur if you do decide to travel to a site. So I just wanted to highlight maybe some factors about the study that might be interesting to you if you're looking forward to participate. So again, there's the opportunity for everyone to receive active treatment in the open label period. There's no biopsy required, no invasive procedures. There are some blood tests, and there's no minimum liver test elevations required for entry. Again, if you are on any other anticholestatic medications like UDCA, you just need to maintain a stable dose, but you are eligible in that case. Some visits, as I mentioned, may be performed at home, and we do offer travel stipends and assistance with travel bookings. So I think it's been emphasized a number of times here at this conference, but patient participation in clinical studies is very vital. This is how we get the development of new drugs, and this is a very new and exciting mechanism. So thank you to all the patients who have participated thus far, and thank you to everyone who continues. And so if you are interested in learning more information, the study is posted on clinicaltrials.gov. Our identifying number is on there. As I mentioned, we have a study website, pacificitchstudy.com. On there, you can find a questionnaire that you can fill out to see if you may or may not be eligible. There's a study video that kind of walks through the same things I just walked through now, but you can review that on your own time. We also have a list of frequently asked questions, and again, a map of our participating sites. And then me and my colleague John will be available at the booth out in the hallway. Please stop by, introduce yourself, and we're available for any questions. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Our next speaker is Dr. Anthony Loizides, Director of Clinical Development, Ipsen Biopharmaceuticals, who will discuss one of Ipsen's PSC clinical trials.
I have a colleague with me. Hi, I'm Anthony Loizides, and I just wanted to make sure it runs smoothly for everyone. I'm the medical director, as I mentioned, at Ipsen, and on behalf of my colleague, who will speak to you, I'd like to thank the organizers for the conference to inviting us to speak. I'm excited about it because it gives me a chance to tell you who we are, what we do, and what we're interested in. It gives us a chance to hear from you what you're interested in and what you'd like to see in clinical trials. Actually, most importantly, for us a chance to talk and to work together for the future. There are two of us, and we have 10 minutes, so we're going to do a little bird's eye view of our projects. So we're going to show you some bullets and not get into the specific details, but we have a booth outside. At any time you guys want to come and speak to us, ask some questions, we're more than happy to talk to you. That one. Thank you. This is our obligatory statement of disclosure, and I'm going to just run past that. Right? So who is Ipsen? Whoops. There we go. Who is Ipsen? Simply put, we're a company for which patients are the heart of everything we do. Our vision is to focus on innovative, transformative medicines that will lead us to be a leading global pharmaceutical company, and we're interested in neurology, rare diseases, obviously like PSC, as well as oncology. To tell you a little bit more about us, we work for patient groups to advocate for patients, and we're a global company that's present in over 100 countries. We listen to and work with more than 250 patient organizations across the world. For example, in rare diseases, we work with 68 organizations such as NORD, Every Life Foundation for Rare Diseases, Global Genes, PPCers, and of course, particularly delighted to work with you guys, the PSC Partners for a Cure. Let's take a look at our solutions. So, committed to giving innovative solutions for people with rare disease by one, focusing on the rarest diseases to make substantial impacts. Two, working with the rare disease community to better understand the challenges faced by those living with these rare diseases and their families. And three, a longstanding commitment and focus using our scientific expertise to bring potential treatment options to patients. We really have an amazing team. It's not only education, but they strive to do their best, and they're just fantastic people that we work with that are really motivated and have passion and dedication. And ultimately, our goal is to address the unmet needs of the estimated 400 million people across the world that have a rare disease. So the first project is my project. It's A3907 in PSC. It's an open label phase 2 study which is currently recruiting. What is A3907? It's an inhibitor of bile acid transporters. It's excessive bile acid is thought to prevent damage to the liver. And 83907 may potentially help prevent bile acids from being transported back into the bloodstream and decrease bile acids in the liver. And the unique thing about 83907 is that it's systemically absorbed. So not only do we have the level of the intestine for which we block the absorption of bile acids, but also at the level of the kidney and the cholangiocytes. Our main goal is to look at safety and efficacy for using 83907 to treat people with PSC. And the study endpoints include things like adverse events, pharmacokinetics, which is a study of how the body interacts with administered medications for the entire duration of exposure, bile acid levels, associated markers, tests of liver health, and so on, as well as itching, which for me is quite important. Endpoints will be examined before and after administration of 83907. And of course, who's eligible for the study? There will be 12 patients, age 18 to 65 years of age, living with PSC, with certain inclusion criteria that's listed on the left there. And we're here to evaluate the safety and pharmacokinetics over 12 weeks in both male and females. And as I mentioned, it's a phase 2 multi-center open-level trial, so you will be getting 83907. Again, the eligibility criteria on the left, we need people with PSC and MRI-proven PSC, people who have PSC and IBD, but the disease should be mild at the time or in remission. Certain laboratory tests we ask for to meet the criteria for eligibility. And of course, we would like you to be able to come to 7 or 8 visits, really depending on the visits themselves. So the exclusion criteria include the presence of documented other causes of chronic liver disease, any biliary intervention in the last 3 months, a history of colostomy or colectomy, and liver cirrhosis. We have at the bottom there the clinicaltrials.gov. We are currently in several countries, mostly, if not all, actually in Europe, Spain, Italy, France, and for the time being. I say that because we're very excited to move to the next chapter of this study, which I cannot talk to you about, but there's going to be much more coming up and something that we're going to look at that is rarely looked at in other populations, so stay tuned. In the meantime, here's my colleague.
And we also have from Ipsen, Dr. Ikenna Okechukwu, Chief Medical Director.
Hi, everybody. So just to continue from where Anthony stopped, we do have 2 studies that we do have 2 studies running at the Ipsen, and Anthony just talked about his study, and I'm just going to talk about mine. This study is called ELMWOOD for short. So it's an investigative drug for PSC, which is peroxisome proliferator activated receptor, or PPAR alpha delta agonist. It improves the flow of bile, and it also may have potential inflammatory effects. In addition to improving the flow of bile, it also sort of helps with the equilibrium, and that will be beneficial for patients with PSC. So the PPAR alpha delta agonist, the activation by elafibranor could also cause anti-inflammatory effects. The main goal of this study is really to evaluate safety and tolerability of elafibranor and also efficacy. We are evaluating various endpoints, and that would include adverse events, safety, tests that evaluate liver disease like ALP, AST, pharmacokinetics, and various clinical symptoms like itching. Now, this is a global multi-center placebo-controlled trial, and it's relatively large. So we have about 60 patients in the study. For a rare disease, of course. The age range is from 18 to 75. The patients with certain inclusion criteria, a few of them I'll mention in a few. The trial really, as I mentioned earlier, is to evaluate safety and efficacy of elafibranor, and there are two doses that we use here in addition to the placebo. So we're comparing the 80 to the 120 and the 80. So we're comparing 80, 120, and to the placebo each way. In the eligibility criteria of these patients, we want to make sure that patients demonstrate the presence of some inclusion criteria that will be in the absence of apparent causes of secondary sclerosis and cholangitis. And we want to make sure these patients have elevated ALPs above upper limit of normal in the preceding 6 months to screening, and also a cholangiogram. We do have some specific inclusion criteria that I'll mention. This is not exhaustive, this is just a few. The ALP needs to be above at least 1.5 upper limit of normal. We have bilirubin not more than 2 times upper limit of normal, and we also have to have the patients have a 3-month stability on the medications for itching. We also want to talk about some exclusion criteria here, where we'll need to have these patients. We'll need to have patients that come into the study not have concomitant chronic liver disease at any point, and also with bacterial cholangitis, we don't have patients having bacterial cholangitis within 60 days of screening or on treatment for prophylaxis for bacterial cholangitis. We also want to make sure that none of these patients have cancer of any sort, or hepatocellular carcinoma. There are about 7 countries involved, that we're gonna, be having these trials in. We have about 6 of them up and running. I believe we still have the UK left. So, in the US, we have about probably 30 sites. So thank you very much, and hope you have a good rest of your day.
Thank you both. And next, we have Chris Peetz, who is President and Chief Executive Officer, and he is from Mirum Pharmaceuticals. Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks, everyone, for the opportunity to talk and tell you a little bit about Mirum and some of our programs. And that's what I'll do today. Give a quick overview of the company, a snapshot of some of the things that we're working on, and then talk a bit about the VISTA study in PSC. Comment that to make, we have materials on the study out by our booth, a team of Mirum people here with smiling faces underneath those masks that would love to talk with you if you have any questions. So please come find us afterwards. Now, a bit about Mirum. We are a small but mighty group of people with extensive experience in biopharma drug development that is exclusively focused on rare liver diseases. The company exists to bring forward new medicines for rare liver conditions like PSC. 250 employees based out of the Bay Area, but with a presence around the globe, focusing on our clinical programs, and more recently on commercializing now a growing list of products. We have 3 medicines approved in different rare diseases related to bile acid metabolism and bile acid overload and cholestasis. Quick snapshot on the 2 products that target bile acid in cholestasis, Livmarli and Volixibat, the programs that we'll talk a little bit about today. They're both oral, minimally absorbed ileal bile acid transport inhibitors. A little bit of the diagram here of how they work, and basically it's quite simply blocking the absorption of bile acids in the GI tract and helping to flush them out of the body. So we think this is quite relevant across a number of cholestatic settings where bile acid levels are quite high and causing some of the symptomatic burden of cholestatic disease and implicated in some of the long-term poor outcomes as well. What we've seen from our clinical data, which is quite extensive in the pediatric setting, I'll give a snapshot of where we've run studies here in a couple pages, but a lot of this comes from very extensive and long-term follow-up in pediatric settings of cholestasis and bile acid overload, called Alagille syndrome and progressive familial intrahepatic cholestasis. And in those settings with Livmarli, another ileal bile acid transport inhibitor, you see bile acid levels in the blood decrease rapidly. You see quite significant improvements in itch. In our PFIC study, we saw improvements in bilirubin, xanthoma improvements in Alagille syndrome, and with this on some of the quality of life metrics and long-term follow-up, seeing quite promising impacts as well. Putting that into one page of where we've been working across rare liver disease. Up at the top, you see Livmarli, Cholbam, Chenodal. Those are our approved products in different indications related to bile acid disorders. And then in the pipeline below, you can see where we're active running studies. I'll share some highlights from our Alagille syndrome and PFIC experience because it speaks to the potential for this mechanism, the IBAT mechanism in cholestatic disease. And then we'll talk a little bit about the VISTA study in primary sclerosing cholangitis, where we have a phase 2b study evaluating volixibat in PSC. So first, a snapshot on Alagille syndrome. This is a genetic rare disorder primarily studied in children, where quite often there's a quite severe cholestasis and bile acid overload. And in our pivotal study, pivotal phase 2 study, the iconic study of Livmarli and Alagille syndrome, we saw significant reductions in pruritus. So 84% of patients seeing a response on their itch in the first year of the study, and also a significant reduction in serum bile acids with a high response rate on circulating bile acid levels as well. So that's what the drug is doing. It's lowering the circulating bile acid levels, which then we see an improvement in symptomatic burden. And with our clinical program, and this is something that we're going to be trying to do with volixibat and PSC as well, is we had the opportunity to follow these patients for an extended period of time. So we have 5 and 6 years of follow-up looking at the relationship between those pruritus improvements and transplant rate. You can see the promising signal here and this post hoc analysis showing that the improvement in pruritus can relate to potential improvements in transplant decisions. We also have phase 3 data from a study in PFIC, another genetic pediatric disorder. And again, some of the same findings, dramatic reductions in pruritus and improvements in bile acid levels. And in this study, we also saw a significant reduction in bilirubin versus placebo. And again, responders in long-term follow-up do quite well. It was a really exciting session earlier talking about some of the registries in PSC, and we're excited about what work we can do looking at the long-term follow-up in our PSC study to look for similar findings like we've seen in the pediatric settings. From a safety standpoint, it's an oral minimally absorbed product. The most common adverse events that you see are treatment initiation, cramping, and diarrhea, and have full, complete disclosure of that in our package insert as well. Some of our excitement about our PSC program for volixibat actually comes from the maralixibat studies as well. And this is the signal that we've seen in an earlier PSC study looking at 27 patients with PSC treated for 13 weeks with maralixibat. And what was so promising about this study is that you can see in the patients with elevated bile acid levels and with pruritus coming into the study, similar to what this mechanism has done in the pediatric setting, you see reductions in bile acids and reductions in pruritus. So that's kind of what got us excited about the VISTA study for volixibat that we're conducting now. Volixibat is also being studied in primary biliary cholangitis, so think of it as 2 paired studies looking at both of these cholestatic indications. And I'll just give a couple highlights from the VISTA study. Again, please come ask us questions if you want to dive into the detail. But VISTA is evaluating up to 120 patients with PSC. We're at a very exciting point right now where we're coming up on an interim analysis of the first 45 patients that will select a dose for the second portion of the study. A lot of work that's gone into the design of the study that the second portion, we believe, can support taking this to approval. So an eye towards trying to bring forward another potential medicine for rare liver disease. Primary endpoints looking at change in pruritus and also looking at secondaries on serum bile acids and markers of disease progression. Importantly, all patients in the study that complete the placebo-controlled portion have the ability to move on to open label therapy and a long-term follow-up with an eye towards looking at some of those longer-term impacts of volixibat on PSC and starting to find some of the work with registries and look at comparisons to the natural history in the long-term portion of the study. So really excited about what this can mean for advancing the science and understanding of long-term care for PSC. We've put everything we can that we've heard feedback from into the study to make it as patient-friendly as we can. So there's a lot of the typical services in terms of supporting travel reimbursement, allowing for remote visits, and having healthcare practitioners come to your home as part of the site visits where possible. So really appreciate all the feedback from some of the people part of this group that have supported the program and given us feedback to incorporate all this. And really excited about all of the effort to bring this forward to data near term. So with that, I just want to say thank you for all of the interest and collaboration. Without groups like this and the participation of everybody in this room, bringing new medicines like this forward wouldn't be possible. And thanks for letting us be a part of this meeting.
Mr. Peetz, thank you. We'll now wrap up with Dr. Richard Pencek, Senior Director, Clinical Development, Pliant Pharmaceuticals.
Thank you all. It's a pleasure to be here at this conference and being able to present this update on Pliant's PSC clinical development program to you all. Pliant is a relatively new kid on the block. We are a small biotech based in South San Francisco. And today I'll be talking to you about our phase 2 trial in PSC, evaluating the safety, tolerability, and pharmacokinetics of the drug formerly known as PLN 74809, which has now recently been named bexotegrast. So important disclaimer slide. Obviously, this is an investigational product at this point in time. We'll be talking about what we hope will be established with proof of concept, but please realize that these are forward-looking statements. So looking at bexotegrast, this is a compound in our development pipeline. It is essentially our first one into clinical trial space, and it is currently being evaluated for the treatment of 2 diseases in phase 2. PSC, which I'll give more detail on throughout this presentation, as well as another chronic lung disease, a progressive fibrotic lung disease known as idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. That program is slightly ahead of the PSC program. We had the phase 2A trial has been completed in IPF, and that the drug has advanced to late stage phase 2 clinical development. For PSC, this study is actually, I'll describe the study today, but I think importantly, the study has completed its enrollment, and now it is in the early stages of it are completed and expected to read out at the end of the third quarter. If you do the math on that, that is very soon. So we're all excitedly looking forward to that, but I'll really describe the study in 2 parts, the part that'll read out very soon, and then what'll go on for the completion of the trial. So this is a slide kind of describing the background of the mechanism of action, and I think if you were here for the earlier session today, Dr. Hirschfield showed a slide that was an ERCP image of the bile duct. And I think that really codifies how to think about this approach, right? That you saw this bile duct that was inflamed, it was damaged, and that is really the epicenter of PSC. With that persistent inflammation and fibrotic signal essentially radiating out from a cholestatic bile duct or a strictured bile duct and causing damage to both the bile duct as well as the liver cells around it. And in normal situations with an acute injury, there are processes in the body that can deal with that injury that will be upregulated and they will lead to the restoration of the normal structure. When damage like what you see in PSC occurs, that's persistent and doesn't really abate, that signal can become dysregulated, and that's what really leads to the progressive hepatic fibrosis and eventual cirrhosis associated with PSC. One of the central signals associated with that process is a signal called TGF-beta. And bexotegrast essentially is designed to inhibit that signaling, the harmful end of that signaling, to slow the rate of progression of fibrosis. And that's essentially the mechanism that we'll look at in both IPF, the lung disease, as well as PSC. So the study as a whole, this is our first study in PSC with bexotegrast. So the primary endpoint is really built around safety and tolerability of bexotegrast in patients with PSC. And we'll evaluate that over a period of 12 weeks. Secondary endpoints, we're going to look at pharmacokinetics, largely the concentrations of bexotegrast in the blood, how it's absorbed, how it's metabolized, so on and so forth. And then importantly, in the exploratory bucket is where we're really looking at establishing proof of concept. We're going to look at markers of liver health, anti-fibrotic activity, bile flow, and patient-reported outcomes related to the patient's pruritus, as well as quality of life. Now, talk about this study in two parts. Several parts of it will overlap, but essentially the first part of the trial was a 12-week study that evaluated 40 milligrams, 80 milligrams, and 160 milligrams of bexotegrast in patients with PSC over the course of 12 weeks. Patients were largely adults with large duct PSC. Patients needed to be pre-cirrhotic, so no evidence of ongoing cirrhosis, but needed evidence of active fibrosis, essentially at risk for progression of the disease. If IBD was present, it needed to be stable from a medication and a disease activity perspective. And we stratified for URSO use, which essentially means we allowed it into the trial, but we controlled its distribution between the treatment groups so it was balanced across the treatment arms in the study. And we've already talked a little bit about the endpoints, but just to reiterate again, safety, tolerability, PK were the crux, with our markers of fibrosis, as well as change in ALP, as well as some imaging, looking at things like FibroScan and MRE to complement that data set. The second part of the trial, which is presently ongoing, again, same inclusion-exclusion criteria for the patients, and largely the same endpoints. What's really different is that the current portion of the study is evaluating the highest dose of bexotegrast at 320 milligrams once daily. And same randomization, so we'll have about 7 placebo patients and 21 bexotegrast-treated patients. The key difference here is that in addition to 12 weeks worth of data, the study will be extended to evaluate patients out to a minimum of 24 weeks and up to 48 weeks. So this will be a bit longer evaluation of the highest dose that's used in this clinical trial. We've talked a little bit about the markers, but the pathway that we're targeting with TGF-beta is a direct approach to try to be an anti-fibrotic treatment. Consistent with that, we're looking at biomarkers related to scarring of the liver, as well as the ELF score, what's going on with bile acids, and as well as the imaging work that I've already mentioned around FibroScan, as well as MRCP. Questionnaires. Again, I'm really excited about the work that PSC Partners is doing in this front because unfortunately there really isn't a validated PSC, patient-reported outcome, that really encapsulates what's going on with the PSC patient. So at this point in time, the PROs we're using are relatively general quality of life and pruritus-related questionnaires that are more generalizable to chronic liver disease, again, with a focus on fatigue and itch, as well as quality of life, like activity levels with the patients, and worry that's a part of their daily life. So all that being said, again, it's a distinct pleasure to be here with you all today. Very happy to take questions on a one-on-one basis. If you see me, grab me. I'm more than happy to talk about any aspect of our study. And we're going to be excited to be delivering clinical trial data from our PSC study in the near future. So thank you very much.
This was pretty exciting, yes? And I appreciate, and we'll do an all-around applause to everybody, our speakers. I had said no questions, but we do have just a few minutes. What I'm wondering, is there someone who might have a question that each of our speakers could give like a lightning fast response to? Does anybody have a question that's just burning that all of them could respond to? Or are you all tired and you want to go back and relax before dinner? Sounds like relaxation is a better thing. All right, truly, before I have you give them a real well-deserved thank you, what I'd like to say before we close is, remember, as all of you get ready to go to dinner tonight, please stop and you'll see a desk, a couple tables near the exit to the opium area, opium terrace. What you'll do there is you will pick up your dinner table card so that you know which table you're sitting at. You will be divided by state and/or regional area, and it will be exciting to find who gets to sit at your table and who you get to talk with. So dinner is at 7, Opium Terrace, and now can we really give a wonderful round of applause to our speakers?